The ability to pose our sculpture is especially relevant but not limited to character sculpting. As we sculpt, it makes the most sense to take advantage of our symmetry tools, which leaves our character in a dull, neutral pose. Compare that to the concept art with Melvin jumping in the air. It's a much more appealing pose. So it's common in a character sculptor's workflow to conclude by posing the sculpture for the sake of presentation. And so for this demonstration, we will pose the arms to match the artwork. And so let's begin by masking off the arm. We can use the B hotkey for box select because the transition is this straight line at the shoulder. All right, that didn't quite work. I picked up a little bit of the side here. Alt-M to clear. We can also use the lasso mask, which has a secret hotkey. I'm not sure why it's not listed here. And it's not listed in the mask menu. But if you hold Shift and Control, right click and drag, that is your lasso mask tool, and we can use that straight line that connects the loop to our advantage. And then our A pie menu, choose smooth mask. I can hit Shift R to repeat that, or you can just hit A and do the smooth mask option several times. If we undo that, that can also be quite fast. A down, Control I to invert our mask. And let's try the pose brush. Being called that, it might make the most sense. And so we need to make our radius much bigger so that it reaches from the hand to the shoulder. But we run into a problem. This tool wants to connect our rotational pivot to the abdomen rather than the shoulder. And no matter what we do, we're just not going to be able to fix that, which will lead us to some other tools down here. However, it will work with the thumb, right? So the thumb kind of has this balled up fist situation, and we can pose that here. And then jump to the inflate brush, kind of puff these two together. Grab brush. Let's see, what's the fall off with that? Let's jump to custom. And I like to pull this point to the upper left. There we go, that's more like it. And so when it comes to posing, what I like to do is get the majority of the pose with the posing tools and then finalize it with traditional sculpting. Posing brushes by themselves are rarely final in my experience. So the other posing tools that are extremely powerful, we have not gone over them yet, are down here at the bottom. They're the transformation tools. So we've got move, rotate, scale, and transform, which simply combines all three. And this is the same widget that we get in object mode. And so we can click in the middle and move it around. We can rotate it. Of course, we want the pivot to make sense. In this situation, we want it on the shoulder. So let's undo any transforms. Also, we don't want to make this symmetrical. Let's turn off symmetry. And I guess we can leave it for the thumb. That was a happy accident. But let's box select the screen left arm. So we're just working on the screen right arm. And when it comes to the transform tools, to set the pivot, we can hold Shift and right click where we want it. And this will stick to the surface, which can be fine. Like if we can rotate this arm up, but it will present problems because the actual shoulder rotation is in the middle of the arm. And so if we want to achieve that, we can come up here to the sculpt menu and choose set pivot. And we've got several options, but the one I'm interested in is the mask border, because our mask ends right there at the shoulder, and that's going to be an ideal pivot location. So we can rotate this now into position. We can move it. And there is a bit of a bug that's been there for years, since the last version of this course. Sometimes you'll see when I transition between rotation and translation, a little bit of a jump where some of the rotation is negated. And yeah, it was a problem the last time I recorded this course. You see that little tiny jump, and it still seems to be a problem. So it kind of hinders some precision in the tool, but it's still functional. So with the entire arm posed, we can now move to the forearm and hand. And so I'll clear the mask, Alt-M, and then let's drag another lasso, Shift Control, right click and drag, A, and then smooth mask, A, and smooth mask again, and then sculpt, set pivot to masked border, Control I to invert, and let's rotate this into position. It helps to kind of rotate around so that this makes sense in 3D space, not just from the one angle we're looking at it. And that's the majority of the pose. Now everything's kind of twisted and mangled, but that's fine because I can Alt-M to clear the mask and then jump to our regular brushes, our standard brushes, and smooth out the twists, correct the silhouette, inflate at the crease, smooth it out. And just with a little bit of TLC, the pose for the arm will be done. Now, something to keep in mind is it might look bad in the back, but if you're not going to see it, who cares? But I'm fixing it, so presumably we will see it in this hypothetical situation. But all right, I think that's going to be good for the screen right arm. Now let's jump over to the screen left. It's the same pose, it's just pointed down instead of up. Once again, lasso mask. Whoops, accidentally touched my Wacom, so I need to redo it. Control I to invert, A, smooth mask a couple times. And we'll do this once again with our transform operator, sculpt, set pivot to the mask border. And while it does take some getting used to, once you get the hang of posing, the tools are actually quite strong. And I might even say enjoyable. Let's smooth the mask, set the pivot point. You saw that little jump again. I'm not sure why that hasn't been fixed in so many years, but oh well. Alt-M to clear the mask, and then we can clean it up. One thing about poses is you want your creases to be nice and tight. There we go. And that is a basic demonstration of Blender's Sculpt Mode's pose tools.